Welcome to the deep dive. Ever thought about some maybe less obvious links between your physical health and, well, your mental state?
Yeah, absolutely.
Today we're diving into some really fresh research, looking at how body fat might actually be connected to things like anxiety and even depression symptoms.
Exactly. We're looking at a fascinating study. It just came out, published in Nature Metabolism this April 15th, 2025, actually.
Oh, brand new then.
Very new. And it kind of moves beyond that simple idea that, more weight equals a lower mood. This gets into some really specific and honestly quite surprising connections.
Right. So the big question we're really trying to tackle here is, what are the main things this study found? And maybe what could they tell us about that really complex dance between our bodies and our minds?
hmm
Sounds like it's more than just noticing two things happen at the same time.
Oh, definitely. So the core finding, it does point to a correlation.
Hmm.
Higher percentages of body fat were linked to more symptoms of depression.
Okay, that part sounds familiar.
But what's really interesting is where they saw this. It wasn't just in people you might typically think of as overweight. It was also particularly noticeable in men and, maybe most surprisingly, in underweight individuals too.
Underweight. Okay, wait, let's unpack that a bit.
Yeah,
That really does throw a wrench in the usual thinking, doesn't it?
it does.
So it's not as simple as saying excess weight automatically leads to feeling down.
Exactly. It suggests something much more complex is going on. And, it gets even more detailed when you look at where that fat is.
The distribution.
Precisely.
Yeah.
The researchers found the strongest links between depression symptoms and fat that was located in really specific areas. The legs, the gynoid region, which is basically hips and thighs, and get this, even the head.
The head, seriously, that's not one you hear every day.
Not at all.
So, okay, it's not just about your overall BMI number then. It really sounds like the sort of map of where fat is on our body might hold some really important clues.
That's a great way to put it. It adds this really fascinating layer. Now, the researchers, they didn't just stop at, seeing these connections. They wanted to know why. What's the biology behind it?
The mechanism.
Yes. And this is where it gets really interesting. It seems psychological stress is a major player.
Stress. Okay, we all know stress can mess with us mentally, but how does it tie into body fat in this specific way the study talks about?
Right. So when we get stressed, psychologically stressed, it triggers that classic fight or flight response. We all know that one.
Mhm.
And this, in turn, starts a process in our fat cells, the adipose tissue, called lipolysis.
Lipolysis. Sounds technical.
It just means the breakdown of stored fat,
Yeah.
basically releasing fatty acids into your bloodstream.
Okay, so stress makes fat break down. I think I follow that.
Right.
But then what? What happens once those fats are, floating around?
Well, these released fatty acids, they act like a signal. They actually stimulate immune cells that live right there within the fat tissue.
Immune cells in fat. Okay.
Yeah, and these activated immune cells then release a specific hormone. It's called GDF-15.
GDF-15. Okay, that's a new one on me. So what's its role in this whole chain reaction?
This seems to be the crucial bit. The study found that GDF-15 travels from the fat tissue, communicates with the brain, and this communication ultimately results in feelings of anxiety.
Wow. Hold on. So stress can literally make your fat send anxiety signals to your brain.
That's what the evidence is pointing towards.
Yes, that's quite something. It's not just a feeling then, there's a real biological pathway linking stress, fat tissue changes, and our mental state.
It's a potential game changer in how we think about this. And, to really nail this down, the researchers did a lot of careful experiments with mice.
The mouse models.
Exactly.
Mm.
They used behavioral tests, looked for anxiety-like behaviors, and did deep molecular analyses to pinpoint the exact pathways being activated.
And did the mice confirm what they were seeing or suspecting in humans?
They did, yeah. The mouse experiments clearly showed this link between metabolic changes happening in the fat tissue and the development of these anxiety-like behaviors. It really backs up the biological mechanism they're proposing.
So thinking ahead, what could this all mean for how we might, I don't know, approach treating mental health, particularly anxiety?
That's the really exciting part, potentially. The researchers themselves sound pretty optimistic that these findings could, open up completely new avenues for anxiety treatments
Oh, so?
by targeting these metabolic pathways. So instead of only focusing treatments on the brain, which is the traditional approach,
Right.
we might be able to tackle anxiety by looking at the body's metabolism, specifically what's happening with this GDF-15 signal from fat.
That's a really different perspective. Are there specific ideas they mentioned, like actual treatment approaches?
Yes, they did. They specifically mentioned the potential of using GDF-15 blockers.
Blockers
Right.
to stop the signal.
Exactly. And interestingly, these kinds of drugs are actually already in development by pharma companies, mainly for cancer treatment.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Hmm.
So the researchers are suggesting, hey, maybe these drugs, or similar ones, could also work for anxiety by basically cutting off that GDF-15 communication pathway to the brain.
Huh. Fascinating. Repurposing something already in the pipeline that could potentially offer a whole new toolkit for people dealing with anxiety.
It certainly holds promise. And, if you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, this research feels particularly relevant right now, doesn't it?
How do you mean?
Well, we're seeing rising rates of both anxiety disorders and obesity in many parts of the world. Understanding the deep biological links, how they might be intertwined, it feels really crucial if we want effective strategies for improving people's overall well-being.
Absolutely. It really drives home just how connected everything is, physical health, mental health, right down to our cells and hormones.
Hmm.
So for you listening to this, the big takeaway seems to be it's probably not just about the total amount of body fat you have.
Exactly. What's emerging is potentially more important is where that fat is located. Those specific areas like legs, hips, even the head.
Yeah.
And perhaps even more critically, how metabolically active that fat is.
Well,
How it responds to things like stress by releasing GDF-15, which then seems to directly influence anxiety levels.
it does make you wonder, maybe fat in those specific spots is just, I don't know, more prone to releasing GDF-15
Yeah,
or has more of those immune cells.
that's a great question. The study points to the connection, but the why behind the location specificity likely needs more research. But the link itself is the key finding here.
Right. So wrapping this up, this Nature Metabolism study gives us this really compelling new window into the biology connecting fat, stress, and mental health, especially anxiety.
Yeah, direct biological pathway. And the potential for new treatments coming out of this, like those GDF-15 blockers, it offers a genuine sense of hope, I think, for maybe finding more targeted and effective ways to help people manage anxiety down the road.
Definitely food for thought. And speaking of thought, maybe here's something for you to mull over. Given this link we've discussed, stress triggering fat breakdown, releasing GDF-15, leading to anxiety, what kind of lifestyle adjustments, maybe beyond just the obvious diet and exercise, could potentially influence this pathway? Things that might indirectly dial down that stress lipolysis GDF-15 connection and just maybe positively impact your mental well-being. It's all about that intricate communication between mind and body. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.